You have been programmed. Not you, as in the higher consciousness, the real you, the immortal you, but you, the mind, computer, and vehicle body that you presently inhabit in this incarnation, in this reality. That, quote, you, the person in the mirror that you identify as you, the persona mask, the vehicle that you operate, that you think is you, has been programmed from birth and beyond to be the individual that you are now. Everything you see feeds your programming. Everything you watch on TV, everything you observe your peers and family and friends and enemies even do, that is programming. Everything you read, everything you watch on TV, programming. Everything on the news, programming. You have been programmed. The mind you, the body you, the vehicle you has been programmed to be the persona that you identify with as yourself right now. One of the programming I would like to discuss in this episode is the anger programming. What is anger? Some call it an emotion. I think it's more appropriately called a reflex. Anger is something that happens when you cannot pause to consider a logical response to whatever has triggered the reflex. That is anger, a reflex, an emotional reflex. So, for example, you're driving down the street, you're about to make a turn, you're stopped at the stop sign, and the other person comes barreling down, and right when you're about to turn, they cut you off. Most people will respond with anger, be it the blasting of the horns, the flipping of the middle finger, the shouting and the pointing. It's a reflexed response triggered more often than not by another person's actions. I wanted to do an episode on anger today because I wanted you to consider if it is possible for you to live an existence without anger. If it's possible for you to attempt to. If you lived in a reality where everything you watched on the TV was devoid of anger, where anger was not a normative response, would you react to anger? If you lived in a reality where people didn't shout at each other, where people didn't react, where anger as a reflex, as an quote emotion, was completely unheard of, never existed, was not considered a normative response to any given circumstance, would you react in anger to things that don't go your way or are unexpected, or that you typically allow to agitate you? More likely than not, you wouldn't. The reason why a lot of us respond in anger is because we've been programmed by everything we see to believe that anger is a normal, and even some have gone as far as to say healthy, response. But what is normal? And just because multitudes of people partake in a behavior, does that make that behavior right, healthy, natural? There are millions of people right now on social media, swiping through comments, liking, retweeting, tweeting, arguing with strangers on their little 6-inch screens. Because we all partake in this behavior, or at least the majority of us do, we believe that this behavior is somehow normal, is somehow normative. And we sometimes forget that said behavior would have been considered abnormal not too long ago. I recently deleted pretty much all social media from my phone. And my cousin asked me how many hours did I find myself spending on it before I deleted the apps. My response to him was, the fact that you think it's normal for one thing to consume hours of my life should tell you that this is a problem. The only thing most people spent hours doing before the advent of social media and smartphones was typically either sleeping, working, or studying, learning, improving. The television and entertainment was something that was reserved for after these other things were met. When you came home was when you would take a couple hours to yourself to watch your favorite shows, catch up on your favorite news channels, and then you turned the TV off, perhaps picked up a good book, and then you went to sleep. And before television was 24 hours, they had TV just for a few hours. And then afterwards, you would communicate with your loved ones and your friends and your family members. Have conversations, tell stories, play games, eat, drink, sleep, start it all again. And now, each and every single one of us has accepted as, quote, normal an invention by a handful of humans has now infected the minds of billions of people, the hands of billions of people, the postures of billions of people. How many people now have the syndrome called technic, where their necks have been spent in the bowed down position for so long that they're incapable of sitting up straight with shoulders back for long periods of time before subjecting their bodies to the slouched and caved in posture. That's a posture of, I would say, de-evolution brought about from years and years of consistent and repetitive cell phone usage, smartphone usage, browsing social media. If you asked an individual from 50 years ago to look upon us now and how we behave, how we've forgotten how to interact with each other one-on-one, how when you attempt to have a conversation with a person, no less than a few seconds into the conversation, the person compulsively picks up their phone while you're in the process of talking to them. They would say that our society has gone mad. But the majority of us accept this behavior as normative. Something started just by a few people. This observation had me contemplating anger. And the example I gave earlier about if we lived in a society devoid of anger, would we still react in anger? If we lived in a society where your favorite superhero, for example, whenever faced with a confrontation, rather than having an emotional reaction of violence and anger and an outburst, logically assessed the situation, logically assessed his response to the situation, put away ego, pride, and violence, and removed himself from the situation. If we had role models, positive role models that showed us healthy, natural ways to deal with anger, what would our society be like now? Every action, for the most part, that the majority of human beings partake in was inspired by or started by just a handful of humans a while ago. Every invention was created by a handful of humans a while ago. You think of anything from the toilet to the couch to the bed to the wheel to the vehicle to the plane. Everything that we use, that we accept as just a normal part of humanity, was actually something that was created by a handful of humans a short while ago. The same too can be applied to our emotions, to our perceptions of relationships, of jealousy, of anger, of monogamy, of polygamy, of social mores and social laws, of right and wrong. Our ideas of tribalism and racism. It was something originated by a handful of humans that spread and continues to dominate humanity's mindset and psyche now. And so my challenge to you is this. The next time you're faced with a situation and you feel a compulsion to react in anger, ask yourself, is the anger necessary? Is the anger an emotion, a feeling, or an impulse, a reaction, and without thought, a reflex? Give yourself 2 or 3 seconds to assess the situation logically, to remove yourself from the situation before responding. I think that when you do this, you'll find that anger and similar reactions isn't as natural as we think it to be. You see, we are warned against ego and pride, and we are warned appropriately so. But nobody stops to ask why. Why should we put away ego and pride? Why? Because this is a moral thing? Morality is subjective. It's a set of laws collectively decided upon that particular reality's culture. In a parallel universe, their ideas of morality would vary drastically different from ours. Even in our reality now, in this universe, throughout history, ideas of morality has changed, either evolved or in some ways devolved in others. Same too with the things that we take as natural. It's all programming, all of it. My job as your guide in this multiverse is to teach you how to play the game consciously, how to take your consciousness from a perpetual state of being driven by your machine, your body machine, your mind computer. I call it living in a state of autopilot and allowing everything to cause you to react unthinking as a result of your mind's programming within this reality. It is my job to teach you that you can shift from autopilot and move your mind to a secondary status wherein you become fully conscious of what takes your energy and what may not need to. Think of the energy expelled in reacting with anger. If someone upsets you and cuts you off, you have two options. You're driving in traffic. You stop at a stop sign. As you prepare to turn, someone comes barreling down. You prepare to yell. That is energy. You take yourself from a moment of calm, and because of a trigger outside of yourself, you react. You give energy. You lose your peace. You lose your calm. You lose autonomy over yourself, and allow the programming of society and of what we see on TV and in the news and in the media. It's literally called programming. What we've learned from those who came before us, from our parents, from humans who were also operating an autopilot. We allow these programmed responses to shift us into situations that exert more energy than we should be willing to give away. Reality is a simulation. If you've been listening to the podcast, you've probably heard this statement quite a few times from me at this point. It's a simulation. And every simulation has two options: free play and story mode. Computer, autopilot, or manual. Even a vehicle has those same settings. An airplane can either fly on autopilot or can be flown by a conscious pilot. Your vehicle can either go and operate in automatic, or you can have a manual control. And what I'm saying to you is this: start with the anger program. There will be many situations throughout the day that will give you plenty of opportunities to take a step back and see if you can shift your mind off autopilot and allow your consciousness to take the helm. When someone attempts to anger you, whether intentionally or not, before you allow the impulse to trigger that reflex of anger, see if you can't logically assess the situation. See if you can't interject before the response a voice that says, is this situation worth the exertion of the energy I'm about to expel? What does the expulsion of this energy serve? If I yell at this person, what do I gain? If I allow my blood pressure to be elevated, if I allow my voice to be raised, if I allow my teeth to clench and my fists to ball, if I allow myself to lash out, whether physically, violently, or verbally, which reality Which multiverse am I shifting unconsciously through? Will this action lower my vibration and shift me to a lower dimension where I'm going to be subject to continued interactions with lowered dimensional beings? Or do I want to keep allowing my consciousness to travel upward, to vibrate upward, to interact with higher dimensional beings on the same path as I would like to be? You see, every action that we partake in through our force of will in this reality causes our paths to shift in a way. Every choice you make, every move you make affects your reality experience. So when you are faced with a situation and you choose to either respond with a programmed response, like the anger program, you then choose the reality or the multiverse or the timeline wherein you will continue experiencing anger. 99%, I would say, of the humans presently existing are on that level. 99% of humans that you see and interact with that have a consciousness attached to them, of course, to their vehicle, their human body vehicle, are just going along with their autopilot programming. They're on story mode. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're listening to this podcast, and perhaps this is your 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 1000th incarnation within the simulated reality we call life, I challenge you, try something different. Try to see if you can live contrary to the way in which you have been, or I should say, to the way in which you've allowed your human body machine and the mind attached to it to be programmed. What happens if when you're confronted, you react in a way that nobody expects you to? If someone yells at you, you're programmed to yell back. If someone cuts you off, you're programmed to honk your horn or to yell or to rage, to reflex, to move without thought, without logic, without consideration in a particular vibration. This is what we all do. Just like we're all programmed to go to school, get the job, work, retire, travel, die. I'm challenging you to do something different. Break the programming. Nothing wrong with the programming. But why not see if, instead of reacting in anger in the way you've been programmed to for all your life, you stop and apologize? Or when people expect you to be upset, you smile. Or You say to yourself, I have no ego to protect. I don't need it. Let's see what happens, where I end up if instead I chose the road less traveled, the path of free play within our simulated reality. Try it. Thank you for listening.